Baker, Bigelow, Bloom, Bonilla, Bonta, Bro, Brown, Burke, Calderon, Campos, Chang, Chow, Chavez, David Chu, Canson Chu, Cooley, Cooper, DeBobne, Daly, Daly, Dodd, Eggman, Frazier, Gaines, Gallagher, Christina Garcia, Eduardo Garcia, Gatto, Gibson, Gomez, Gonzalez, Gordon, Gray, Grove, Hadley, Harper, Hernandez, Holden, Irwin, Jones, Jones Sawyer, Kim, Lackey, Levine, Linder, Lopez, Lowe, Mainshine, Mathis, Mays, McCarty, Medina, Melendez, Mullen, Nazarian, Obernolte, O'Donnell, Olson, Patterson, Perea, Quirk, Rendon, Ridley Thomas, Rodriguez, Salas, Santiago, Steinorth, Stone, Thurmond, Ting, Wagner, Waldron, Weber, Wilk, Williams, Wood. Madam Speaker.
A quorum of red is present. We ask our guests and visitors in the rear of the chamber and in the gallery to please stand up for today's prayer. Today's prayer will be offered by our Assembly Chaplain, Father Constantine Papademos. Father Papademos.
Good morning. Let us pray. Lord, so many people today are looking for answers. They look for direction and tune into different voices around them. But we, Lord, should never settle for second best. We should not look to a higher power. We should look to you, the highest power, the creator of the universe. You are good and have a good plan for our life. Show us your way so that we can walk with you all the days of our life. Amen.
We ask our guests and visitors to remain standing and join us for the flag salute. Please join Assemblymember Asajian as he leads us in the pledge.
Please face the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Reading of the previous day's journal. Madam Clerk.
Assembly Chamber, Sacramento, Monday, February 2nd, 2015. The Assembly met at 12 noon. Honorable David Chu, Assistant Pro Speaker 10 of the Assembly, presiding. Chief Clerk E. Dotson Wilson at the desk. Reading Clerk Kathleen M. Lewis.
Mr. Holden moves and Ms. Olson seconds that the reading of the previous day's journal be dispensed with. Presentation of petitions, there are none. Introduction and references of bills will be deferred. Reports of committees, there are none. Messages from the Governor, there are none. Messages from the Senate, there are none. Members, we're now at motions and resolutions. The absences of the day for illness, Mr. DeBobne, Ms. Gaines, Ms. Waldrons. Moving to procedural motions. Mr. Holden, you are recognized for your motions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 45.5 to allow Assembly Member Baker, Chow, Gordon, and Quirk to speak on adjourned in memory today.
Without objection, the request is granted. Let's move on to business on the daily file. File item 1, pass and retain. File item 2, ACR 12 by Assemblymember Wilk. Mr. Wilk, you may open on, actually, apologies, the clerk will read.
Assembly Concurrent Resolution 12 by Assemblymember Wilk relative to Ronald Reagan Day.
Mr. Wilk, you may open on your measure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assembly District 38, which I have the honor to represent, is home to the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library. And today I rise to present ACR 12, which will declare February 6, 2015 as Ronald Reagan Day. As you may know, tomorrow will be the 104th anniversary of the President's birthday, and June 5th will be the 11th year since he has left us. To me, Ronald Reagan is the quintessential American. Grew up humble roots. His nickname was Dutch because he looked like a little Dutch boy because they couldn't afford to go to the barber, so his mother would put a bowl on top of his head and cut his hair. Grew up, worked as a lifeguard. In fact, set a record. He saved 79 lives as a lifeguard. Many of those were young women, so I think, they may not have been all that serious, but it's an official tally of 79. From there, obviously, we all know he was a broadcaster, actually came to South Catalina Island to cover the Cubs spring training and did a screen test and signed on with Warner Brothers with a 5-year contract and became an actor, union leader, corporate spokesperson before becoming governor of this great state and ultimately president. Reagan understood that America was more than just a place, it's a set of ideals. And he governed under the principles that our founding fathers laid forth. Personal responsibility. Family is the foundation of society. Private property is the cornerstone to economic freedom. Free markets as the engine to more jobs and to wealth creation. And a government dedicated to providing opportunities for all, and a personal faith to serve as an inspiration to be better and also to constrain to do no harm. When Reagan took the oath as our president, our nation was suffering high unemployment, high interest rates, and an energy crisis. And on the world stage, the Soviet Union was marching. Conventional wisdom at that time believed that collectivism was inevitable and that the Soviet Union and communism would prevail. However, Reagan stood strong on those founding principles and gave voice to those that believed that America was a shining light on the hill. Now, as a nation, we have not achieved all those ideals. We in this house work every day to make those things come to reality. But it's about the journey getting there, and working together, we will get there. So I hope you will join me in honoring the only person to ever serve as governor of California and President of the United States of America, Ronald Reagan. I ask that the first roll be open to co-authors.
Thank you, Mr. Wilk. At this time, the clerk will open the roll for co-authors. The clerk will call the roll. 65 co-authors are added. Without objection, we can take a voice vote on this measure. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. We'll now move to announcements and adjournments in memory. The following members were granted prior permission to speak on and adjourn in memory. Assemblymember Baker, you are recognized at your desk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of adjourning in memory of Brett Knapp, a resident of Livermore. He passed away November 18th of this last year. Brett was a dedicated family man and well-loved by friends throughout the community, but I want to highlight for us today his very distinguished career protecting our country. Brett was acting director of the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, a facility critical to the national security and protection of our country. He had a depth of knowledge about the U.S. nuclear deterrent and weapons systems, and much of his career was dedicated to assessing and certifying, refurbishing, and dismantling weapons systems. In short, he was part of making our world safer. He joined the lab in 1980 and held a number of leadership positions there, and he also worked at the Los Alamos National Facility as well. He served in many critical leadership positions, including as the Principal Associate Director for the Weapons Program, where he oversaw the directorates for weapons, physics, plutonium science, and manufacturing. And in 2013, we were pleased to see that he returned to Livermore and became the acting director of the lab. Brent spent his entire career in public service. He was also superintendent of the Livermore school system and gave generously of his time to our community. He will be remembered warmly and well in Livermore and throughout this entire state, as well as in New Mexico, with colleagues in Los Alamos and Livermore. He's survived by his wife Cheryl and his two sons Cameron and Trevor. And I thank you for joining me in journeying in his memory today.
Mr. Quirk, you're recognized at your desk.
Good morning, Speaker and members. I also rise to adjourn in the memory of my friend Brett Knapp. He joined the lab in 1980. I joined the nuclear weapons program in 1981. He was the lead engineer on my first nuclear weapons test. It was also his first nuclear weapons test, and so we called it the cherry bomb. Under his leadership, the weapons program integrated planning and execution of the stockpile stewardship program after he became head of the weapons engineering program. He was a hard worker and accomplished a lot during his career, but made spending time with his family a priority. In 2013, as has been said, he was made acting director of the lab. I am absolutely sure that had he not been diagnosed with cancer, that he would have become the lab director, and a fitting end to his career. I have no doubt he will be remembered for his love of the outdoors, his secret barbecue pizza recipes, and astonishing depth of knowledge about the U.S. nuclear deterrent. Again, I ask that this body adjourn today in the memory of a great man, Brett Knapp.
Thank you, Mr. Quirk. Our next adjournment in memory will be offered by Mr. Chow. You're recognized at your desk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I'm asking that we adjourn in the memory today of Abel Castellanos, a 76-year-old crossing guard and Monterey Park resident who passed away on January 27th when a driver lost control of his vehicle and struck Abel, who was sitting in a chair at the corner that he patrolled. Born in Los Angeles, Abel graduated from James Garfield High School and later married Dolores in 1959. In 1963, they moved to Monterey Park with their children, where Abel worked as a linen sales representative for more than 30 years. He retired and began to work as a crossing guard for the past decade. Last year, Abel lost his wife, Dolores, to cancer on their 55th wedding anniversary. He stood by her side to the very end with the utmost dignity as the pillar to his family. Through this difficult time, he still found joy and pride in what he did as a crossing guard. His joy was to serve and protect children and members of his community. His purpose was to keep his family together, tightly knitted, and focused on each other. Being a crossing guard was more than just a job. It was a selfless service, and it gave him purpose. Abel is now reunited with the love of his life, Dolores. He is survived by his children, Ted, Lorraine, and Ronnie, along with their spouses, 13 grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and siblings Daniel, David, and Dora. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chow. Our final adjournment memory will be offered by Mr. Gordon. Mr. Gordon, you're recognized at your desk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to ask us to adjourn in memory of Carl Gerasi. Dr. Gerasi died last Friday at the age of 91 years old. His death occurred in one of his homes, this one in San Francisco in the district of our Assistant Speaker Pro Tem. Carl Gerasi was born in Vienna in 1923. He arrived in America at the age of 16, as he and his mother were able to escape from Austria, escaping the Nazi Holocaust. As an Austrian Jewish refugee here in America at 16 years old, his family was penniless. So he wrote to Eleanor Roosevelt, asking help to get a college scholarship. She intervened on his behalf. And 3 years later, at the age of 19, he graduated from Kenyon College in Ohio with an honors in chemistry. By 1945, he was both a naturalized citizen and in possession of a PhD in chemistry from the University of Wisconsin. In the next 4 years, he began work in the chemistry of pharmaceuticals, and he achieved a patent for the first commercial antihistamine. In 1949, he went to work for a small company called Syntex. They were based in Mexico City. And 2 years later, he and two colleagues synthesized the key ingredient necessary for a birth control pill. He is often called the father of the birth control pill. In 1959, he joined the faculty at the University of Stanford in my district, where he was a professor of chemistry. He went on to work on insect birth control, and that work led to the first non-toxic pesticides. Now, the stock shares that he achieved from Syntex as a result of creating the pill made him a wealthy man. He then assembled an extensive modern art collection with over 150 works by Paul Klee. He bought 1,200 acres on the coastal mountains in my district in Woodside. In 1978, he suffered a tragedy when his daughter from his second marriage, Pamela, committed suicide. She was an artist. And so he turned his 1,200 acres in Woodside into an artist colony, the Gerasi Residence Artist Program. Hundreds of artists come every year, fully paid to spend 3 to 4 months perfecting their art at his residence program. He also decided to become an artist. He became a writer. He wrote poems, books, and plays, several of which were produced off-Broadway and in the West End of London. Last year, he published, in retrospect, From the Pill to the Pen. In 1973, President Nixon gave him the highest award, the National Medal of Science. I first met Dr. Gerasi when I was on the County Board of Supervisors. He wanted to install a wind turbine on his property, the artist colony. And we'd never permitted a wind turbine in San Mateo County. So I had to take the county planner to the site to teach them how to think about planning and building a wind turbine. I later had an opportunity when I was in London to spend 2 hours with Dr. Gerasi at his home in London. We had tea in his garden. And it was the most fascinating conversation, the most fascinating 2 hours in many respects of my life. He was a brilliant man. And we talked at some length about how to produce plays, how to write, how to think about art and its role in culture and society. But we also had the most fascinating conversation about the impact of chemical discoveries and scientific discoveries on society. He understood that what he had created had made a huge change in the world. And he felt a level of responsibility for that I found to be fascinating and intriguing. He was often described as an intellectual polygamist. California and the world have lost a brilliant mind. He is survived by his son Dale and his grandson Alexander, and I ask that we adjourn today in memory of Dr. Carl Gerasi.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Members, please bring the names to the desk to be printed in the journal. All requests to adjourn in memory will be deemed read and printed in the journal. Let's move now to announcements. Assemblymember Cristina Garcia, you're recognized for your announcement.
Good morning, members and Mr. Speaker. I rise today to bring attention to all the beautiful red you see in the Capitol today. The members of the California Legislative Women's Caucus and the American Heart Association have joined together on American Heart Month and Wear Red Day. Today is the annual Capitol Goes Red Day. Each year, 1 in 3 women die of heart disease and stroke. But we can change that because 80% of cardiac events can be prevented with education and lifestyle changes. Only 1 in 5 women believe that heart disease is her greatest health threat, and women comprise only 24% of participants in all heart-related studies. Go Red Woman is about much more than wearing red on National Red Day. It's about making a change. I encourage all members and staff to go to room 444 this morning until noon for blood pressure and health screenings, along with educational literature and healthy snacks. I would also appreciate it if everyone wearing red today, male and female, would join us in the front of the room to take a picture today and upon gaveling down. Thank you.
Thank you, members. I want to also thank you for wearing red today.
I want to take a moment to also make an announcement about one of our colleagues. I'd like to take a moment to celebrate the aging process of Assemblymember Eduardo Garcia as he turns the ripe old age of 38. Happy birthday. The session schedule is as follows. Friday, February the 6th, there's no floor session and no check-in session. Monday, February the 9th, there is a floor session at noon. All other items remaining will be passed and retained. All motions shall be continued. Seeing and hearing no further business, I'm ready to entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Holden moves. Ms. Olson seconds that this House stand adjourned until Monday, February the 9th at noon. Quorum call is lifted.